Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. There are calls for any future decisions on the direction and the prosecution under the Operation Branchform investigation to be made not within the Scottish judiciary, but by an independent outside legal figure. That would be a bit of a shock, I think, for those involved. If they could lose control, they might be in trouble. And this call is coming not from the usual sources outside of the party, but from someone within it. It's coming from Alex Neil. And yes, I know he's retired, but he still does have some influence. It may be waning, but the influence is there. He's still highly respected within the party. And indeed, even without the party, other party people, other supporters, people who don't necessarily support the SNP, recognise Neil as being one of the old school type of politicians. Not entirely mad, not entirely bad. There was a couple of issues. He voted for Brexit, and that kind of alienated some people within the party. But he is still, there, and he has a voice, and it's a voice that some people are listening to. And he is saying that it cannot be covered up. It needs to be independent to show that there is openness and honesty. Who would have thought it? Let's have a look, see what's going on. Here goes. So, ex-SNP MSP calls for independent legal figure to make the final decision on Operation Branchform. And I think quite right. We did the video yesterday that showed how, this was the one from Roger Livermore, that shows how there is no independent prosecutor. There can be no legal prosecutions in Scotland because the law within the Scotland Act says that it must be independent prosecutor, but all the prosecutors belong and within the cabinet of the Scottish government. And so therefore it is the Scottish government that are prosecuting, not an independent prosecutor, which makes it very weird. Alex Neil says the Crown Office should not decide on prosecutions in Operation Branchform. A former Cabinet Secretary has said any decision to prosecute Nicola Sturgeon or her husband over SNP fraud claims should not be made by the Crown Office. Now that will put the fear of God into Sturgeon and Murrell and Beattie, because they know that they can control the Crown Office, the Procurator Fiscal Service. They know they have that. They've got that tied up. If not directly by themselves, then by those who have the influence now, because she, of course, is still highly powerful within the party. She knows where the bodies are buried, for one thing. And so if that was removed, it went into a completely independent body that they had no control over. I mean, that would be puckering time, wouldn't it? Anyway, Alex Neil said an independent legal figure with no ties to Scottish politics should be in charge to guard against perceptions of bias. Now, I will say that he has a little bit of bias, to be fair. He is sort of very much in with Alex Salmond. It was Salmond who brought him in to the cabinet in the first place in 2005, he says, something like that. I know he was there from day one. He was one of those day one MSPs, but I think it was about 2005, 2006, something like that, when he came in under Alex Salmond. He got that promotion. Went to health, I think. Brain playing up, I can't remember. I think he went to health. Anyway, so he's got that. He did not really like Nicola Sturgeon. And so maybe there is a little bit of bias on his part. But again, he's not the one that's going to be deciding. He's just saying, can we have an independent person to remove his bias and to remove her control? So fair enough. Anyway, Peter Murrell, who was the SNP chief executive and is married to the former First Minister, allegedly. She was definitely the former First Minister, but we're talking about the marriage. Very lavender, we all think, don't we? He was arrested last year, but released without charge. Although that's just so far. It doesn't mean that there will be no charges pressing. Sturgeon, an ex-SNP treasurer, Colin Beattie, although that could be a Freudian slip, couldn't it? Anyway, Sturgeon and SNP treasurer Colin Beattie were also arrested and released without charges yet. And police inquiries are ongoing. And there's a member of the cabinet who also is in charge of the law, which means that the judiciary is part of the executive. She needs to be stripped of her role. She actually needs to be fired. She needs to go. She lied. Anyway, Dorothy Bain KC, who as Lord Advocate is head of the prosecution service and an SNP government legal advisor, has recused herself from any role in the case, only because she knows that it would absolutely lead to, possibility of a mistrial. There would be appeals. She wants that all gone. If she can pull herself out, she's not seen to be involved in it, and that way she will be untarnished. But I think it's already too late. That woman is definitely tarnished. Neil, a former SNP Health Secretary, I said he was health, didn't I? Said the Crown Office should go further and recuse itself from any final decision to prosecute if that is what is decided. The ally of Alex Salmond said, but I have not read this. I promise you, I've not read this in advance. Just my memory coming up. Big brain, man. Anyway, the ally of Alex Salmond said, I personally think that someone from a different jurisdiction with no link to Scottish politics should be chosen. Someone from outside Scotland and of international repute. The questions I have are, who would be the person to take that decision and how would that person be appointed? Well, I think perhaps Alistair Jack, as Scottish Secretary, should go to a senior law officer in England, take advice, maybe from the Lord Chancellor. It ultimately goes down to the Lord Chancellor is in charge of all the judges. And maybe get the Lord Chancellor to appoint a completely independent legal person of legal standing, a judge maybe, High Court judge, something like that. Who knows? Anyway, it cannot be the Lord Advocate deciding who makes the decision, as that would not be a recusal. He said if any decision is not going to be tarnished by politics, justice has to be done and has to be seen to be done. He said Scotland is a village and people should be mindful of any perception of political bias in the case. Unfortunately, because of the way it's set up, there's always going to be political bias involving any prosecution. And again, harking back to that video from yesterday, it could be very, very dangerous to start interfering in this, because it is so immured that one is directly a part of the other, that any decision by government over justice is automatically suspect. Anyway, Neil said he has no criticism of the length of time Operation Branchform was taken, and he said his focus is on the role of the Crown Office if a report is sent for their consideration. He said it is understood the probe has focused on hundreds of items of spending when Murrell, who is married to Sturgeon, was the SNP CEO. One of the issues under investigation is the purchase of her high-end motorhome. The Sunday Mail also revealed police are investigating the purchase of a £95,000 Jaguar as part of the fraud probe. The I-Pace SUV is alleged to have been bought by Murrell from a dealership in Edinburgh. Dr. Nick McCarroll, a senior law lecturer at Glasgow Caledonian University, says, I am confident in the Crown Office's independence. I'm not, because we know it is not independent. It cannot legally be independent, as it is staffed by civil servants. It is controlled by a government minister, and its whole object and basis of control is run out of the cabinet. So it cannot possibly be independent. Tory MSP Russell Findlay said, for one of Alex Salmond's closest former cabinet colleagues to publicly question the Lord Advocate's integrity in relation to the SNP fraud investigation is extraordinary and reveals the extent of the civil war gripping Humza Yousaf's party. He said, we've already heard similar clumsy interventions from Nicola Sturgeon loyalists with inappropriate comments about the integrity of Police Scotland. These senior SNP figures should know better and allow police and prosecutors to do their job. And they won't. It's all in fighting. There is a massive civil war. It's a quiet war. It's a cold war, but it's there. There's grating, there's backbiting, there's briefing against, there's briefing for, there's leaks, there's rumours. There's Chinese whispers. They're turning into Chinese murmurs. There'll soon be Chinese shouting. It is absolute wonderful to behold. And the longer it goes on, the better. I'll stop now. We shall come up and we shall finish the video. You wonder if there'll be any calls from any serving SNP MSPs. Perhaps someone like Fergus Ewing may call for him. Fergus Ewing may get up there. Kate Forbes might. Anything that would cause a difficulty, an embarrassment, a split. Anything that would harm and damage Humza Yousaf would be useful to that wing of the party. So perhaps they may. Who knows? It's certainly, the whole thing stinks. They're all corrupt. You know, I mean, I do call, like, you know, we need Kate Forbes to take over. Not because I think she's particularly good, merely that she's particularly sane. She's not as mental as some of them. And she'd certainly clear out the Greens, which would be beneficial to everyone. But ultimately, the SNP need to go. They need to implode. They need to just disappear. And I think the time is coming. And it's very soon. I don't see Humza lasting much longer with everything that's going on. So the time may be ripe for Kate Forbes. And she can use this, I think, as another lever to ping Humza from the chair that he's keeping warm for her. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. Till next time, stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.